I guess one thing I wish I had known is honestly, it was just the best decision I've ever made. Like,
Yeah.
even just picking out the name, I remember it's after my great grandma, and even
Oh,
that has been
cool.
so special. Just knowing that it's going to actually be something that kept me afloat during some of those like hardest times in my life. It's really been like the best thing I've ever done. It's kind of my like soul coming alive.
Mhm. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I'm Courtney Cook, founder of Monarch COO, where I help mission-driven entrepreneurs grow their businesses. Each week, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs to explore the stories behind their successes and challenges. Whether you're just dreaming of starting a business or already building one, this podcast is here to show you that entrepreneurship is more attainable than it might seem, with insights for every stage of the journey. Liza is the founder of Florabelle Food Festivities, a culinary brand dedicated to nourishment, connection, and supporting a circular food economy. Her passion for cooking led her to create Florabelle as a side hustle in 2018. Today, Florabelle is her full-time business that offers meal prepping services to nourish families and new mothers, farm-to-table catering, and fun hands-on cooking classes. After experiencing a multi-year health crisis with autoimmune disease, Liza redefined her approach to food by honing in on incorporating healing and functional ingredients into all her offerings. Her focus on transparency and humility has allowed her to build trust with her customers by guaranteeing that their food is packed with goodness and free from inflammatory ingredients and packaging. With a deep love for food, sustainability, and wellness, Liza continues to share her expertise, proving that nourishment can be healing, delicious, and fun. Let's dive into today's conversation and see what it takes to build a business. Today on the podcast, I have Liza Saracini. So if you would kick us off, Liza, by sharing about your business, what you do, who you serve, and how long you've been a business owner.
Cool. Thanks, Courtney. My name's Liza Saracini. I own a company called Florabelle Food Festivities, which I started over 6 years ago now. But it's funny because I feel like I really am just kind of starting all the time. I feel like it's just getting started. But my company's based in culinary experiences and really trying to bring holistic, nourishing food to my community. So it really started off in-home cooking classes. So that really leaning into that like festivity aspect of the business. So I go into people's homes, people from mid 20s all the way up into just like families with grandkids and everything. So I really serve a wide variety of people in that respect. And now I've expanded to do meal prepping. So that's more for like my new moms, my busy moms, individuals who
Sweet.
don't like cooking and want to have like nourishing food. So we really try to lean into more of that like farm to table aspect and really trying to make everything very transparent. So like no seed oils, no refined sugar, that kind of stuff. And then also doing some catering. So try to do like more, again, farm to table Mediterranean style for that. But just again, like leaning into that transparency and people knowing that they're safe and we can, I guess, rest easy knowing that the food that I'm serving is going to serve up a bunch of different people. So I did like gluten free, dairy free, alcohol free, coffee free, all that stuff for a couple of years. So I really understand how it is going to different like events or trying to pick out meals when you just don't really know what's in the ingredients. So I try to be really cognizant of that.
Awesome. And you're based in Kansas City. And so how far out from at least the Kansas City area do you travel generally? Like, do you have like a certain
Yeah,
vicinity?
well, I've lived in Chicago and LA since I've started this business. So
Oh,
I don't do
wow.
a lot of stuff in Chicago anymore. That was during COVID. So honestly, didn't do a ton of business back then. But
Yep.
when I lived in LA, I made a lot more connections out there. So recently I did an event in California and
Wow.
I've been doing some stuff in Colorado this summer. So working with like regenerative farms and doing stuff like that. So I'm definitely willing to travel. But my business right now is based in KC. But for 2025, I'm hoping to get more yoga retreats or even like
Yeah.
international gigs or something like that. So I'm very willing to go outside the Kansas City area.
Awesome. That is super cool. And like, oh my gosh, that would just open up a whole new world, I feel like, being able
Yeah.
to do that, traveling and also being able to just see places and explore. How fun. That's awesome. So help me understand what inspired the idea for your business and like what got you started in this. I would it would definitely not be on my list of things of I'm not talented in this way. So I guess what started everything for your business?
Yeah, so when I was, I guess, just kind of getting started in my career, I started in advertising for an amazing company here in Kansas City, actually. But I've always loved cooking, like truly since I was young. And so just on the weekends, I started taking classes at the local culinary center, and
Oh,
I did
cool.
sort of like a 9 week I guess like mimicking the first year of culinary school. It was very condensed. It
Yeah.
wasn't that rigorous, but it really did like kind of pique my interest in cooking at sort of a higher level. And so once I got those like foundational skills dialed, I started volunteering at the Culinary Center, and I did that for about 2 years. And I would just kind of like do it on weekends and be like, oh, cool, they're doing a macaron class. I'd love to learn how to make
Sweet.
macarons. And then I started teaching my friends. Like we would just do kind of like girls' night in or something like that. I'd be like, let's make pasta, let's make dumplings. Like here are things I've been learning. And then on my 26th birthday, I did a huge ravioli class. I think maybe I had like 20 friends. I don't think we ate until like 10 p.m. It was
Oh my
not very
gosh.
professional, but once we kind of had that experience, a lot of my friends were like posting on Instagram and people started kind of asking about it. And then I just eventually had people asking like if they could do it. So, my mom actually is one who encouraged me to take the leap. And she's like, you should really try to actually charge money for this and make it a
Yeah.
little bit of a business. So that's how I got started. I really did that for about a year, just kind of almost these like practice classes, I guess. Like I was making money, but really it was just still a very side hustle. Always people I knew. Um, wasn't charging a lot. So I felt like it was just kind of learning as I went. And then I guess on my 27th birthday, that's when I like kind of officially launched Florabelle and kind of made it a bit more of like a branded experience. But again, I've been working a full-time job up until only 2 years ago. So
Okay.
it was really just side hustle up until I would say even last year, because I did have a little bit of a break in between, which we can talk about later.
So what when you went from 26 to 27, what were those steps you took in between like during that year where you were like, okay, I'm going to make this a bigger deal? Was there like a moment where you're like, man, like now is the time, or was it a slow burn, or what did that like year look like?
Gosh, I don't even really remember. I mean, that was definitely a slow burn. I was also getting my master's and working full time. So it
Wow.
was really more of just like a passion project.
Okay.
I would just have, friends or friends of friends reach out every once in a while. And then I would dedicate, maybe a weekend or something like that to making a really great experience. And then I'd have to go back to my normal
Yeah.
life. So I didn't even think I have a website or anything. Like I really was just kind of like trying to put together the pieces. I had some other friends who worked in marketing or who worked in content and stuff. So I did, and they're like my roommates and stuff. So I did have people kind of supporting me in that way where we were like building out a little more content. I was trying to make the experience as good as I could just by constantly, again, just like practicing, having people over. And I was like, we're going to make dumplings because I have to teach
Yeah.
dumplings in a few days.
Cool.
And also really leaning into my travels. So I think during that time I went to Europe. I definitely went to France. Maybe when I was 27, I went to Asia. I did a couple of things like that. So whenever I'd go to those places, I would always take cooking classes and really like
Oh, cool.
immerse myself in the different food, like ingredients, go to farmers markets, stuff like that. So that was another way where I was like, okay, I'm going to keep like learning in different ways and also just doing stuff like master class or like watching YouTube videos when I was like on the
Yeah.
elliptical. Like I was really just shoving it in any little pocket of time that I had. But when you say like when was the aha moment or when you're like, okay, how am I going to do this kind of full time? I would say
Hmm.
that didn't really happen until it still is happening. It
Yeah.
was like, I would say 2 years ago, I had sort of a health crisis. And so I became sort of like disabled for a year,
Oh,
even
wow.
longer than that. It's like 18 months. And so that's when I was like, okay, this is my only thing that I really have to do. So I was like, maybe I would take this full time. But I wouldn't say until, I don't know, even to say like a couple months ago on my 32nd birthday, I was like hiking in Yosemite and I was finally like,
Wow.
okay, I'm doing this full time.
Oh, wow. Can we get
Yeah.
into kind of your health crisis then and
Yeah.
what that looked like? So what what happened and then were you like how were you able to juggle and continue, I guess, fueling this a little bit here and there? I'm sure you weren't going dark in all of the places, but you
No,
certainly
never.
probably couldn't keep things up. But what was that experience?
Yeah. So when I was 28, so maybe like 3 years, 2 or 3 years into the business, I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease. So just like gut health issues,
Mm.
fatigue, brain fog, all that stuff. And it was literally the day I moved to LA, I got diagnosed. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
kind of this like whole world kind of shifted for me. But it was also really this kind of perfect moment because I did get placed into this environment that wasn't really my norm, which is being in the Midwest. So
Mhm.
living in California, it did kind of help me create these like amazing habits around my diet and lifestyle and like digging deeper into sustainability. Like I took some classes at UCLA when I was in that area for like sustainable food systems and got way into gardening and all that stuff. So it was a really cool experience to have when I was going through like the really beginning stages of ulcerative colitis, which is just an autoimmune disease, which unfortunately a lot of people struggle with. But those first couple of years are just trial and error. You don't really know what you're doing. I eliminated all this food. It was really hard. And then maybe like 2 years into that, I started to get a little bit of my stamina back. And so I did some traveling in Guatemala and Mexico. And I also had just been laid off from my sustainable food job. So I was like, I'm going to travel for a while.
Yeah.
So I traveled for like 6 weeks and then got a parasite, which unfortunately really kicked things into gear in
Oh.
terms of my disease. So by the time I flew back to Chicago, I actually was informed that I had to have my large intestine removed.
Wow.
So I had that kind of like emergency surgery and it had an ostomy bag actually. So I found that all out in like 24 hours that I was going to
Oh
live with
my
an ostomy
goodness.
bag. And then I had the option to continue on, like have a couple more surgeries and get it removed, which was, I had like another one maybe 6 months later and another one 4 months later, which was a year ago, actually almost to the day. So I
Oh,
haven't had
wow.
an ostomy bag for a year, but during that year, it was like I'd already had just been laid off. I had already moved home to Kansas City because my health was so bad. So I was doing Florabelle as I could, but I also had like weight restrictions. Like I couldn't lift more than 10 pounds. And
Wow.
my diet was crazy. Like I was constantly not sure what to eat. And it was just kind of a nightmare. So that experience, like has actually made Florabelle so much stronger because now I really resonate with new moms, people who've had surgery, people with autoimmune
Mhm.
disease, like everything I experienced in 1 year, truly. So that has really like helped make the meal prepping and all that stuff very important to me. But it honestly is what gave me the opportunity and I guess the stamina to do Florabelle full time because otherwise I would have obviously gone and gotten another corporate job. I was really loving like working in sustainable food and agriculture tech. So I would have gone back to that if it hadn't been for the surgeries. So that was like the perfect storm that allowed me to do Florabelle. And I was taking on some other like freelance stuff at the time, but over the course of the year, like I just keep coming back to Florabelle, keep coming back to Florabelle and meeting other entrepreneurs and they just keep supporting me. So here we are.
That's crazy. So, did you has like becoming an entrepreneur been a surprise? Like when you were a kid, did you have dreams of like owning your own business ever? It was is has this just been like a surprising turn of events where you're like, "Oh, I'm now a business owner, I guess."
Yeah, honestly, especially around just like the word chef.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to culinary school. I have degrees in everything else besides cooking. So that has like been a hard thing for me to really own. Because I
Yeah.
always feel a little bit unworthy of that. And same thing with like business owner. I'm like, who like according to what? Um, but
Yeah.
I did grow up like wanting to do something really creative. So I guess I never really thought about like business ownership or anything like that, but just always wanting to kind of use my hands or be outside or even just cooking in general. I've always loved that. And I also had like a great experience in corporate life. I worked for like really cool companies, great coworkers, great managers, but I also never quite felt like I had the autonomy to really grow and take leadership. It's just like that
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy.
Yeah.
So I do feel like always constantly like leaning back into Florabelle just gave me that opportunity to be like, I have this great idea. I'm going to execute on it. Or today I'm feeling really energized. I want to work on this. And, today I'm not feeling as energized. So I think entrepreneurship goes well with like my flow.
Yeah.
And same thing with my health. I mean, it is draining. It's probably the hardest job I've ever done. So in some ways it's terrible for my health, but in other ways it's good because I don't feel as restricted to like a 9 to 5. And some days it's like, okay, today I am just literally going to go to acupuncture
Mm-hmm.
and yoga and whatever. And then tomorrow I'm going to work like a 16-hour day. So that has been really nice and freeing.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So as you've, kind of stepped in and out of the business as your health is kind of allowed, how have you said you started, I think, right, with cooking classes.
Mhm.
And that's transitioned. Have you like transitioned to different like buckets of what you do based on what people are coming to you asking, "Hey, can you do this?" Or how have you like seized those opportunities, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think my my strategy really has been more reactive than
Yeah.
proactive. I have a ton of ideas, and I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like I have the idea and I'm usually like maybe 2 years ahead of
Yeah.
what my actual execution is.
Yep.
I even have like a little mind map of something I did like 2 years ago
Oh,
over here in
sweet.
my kitchen, that I just pulled out the other day. And I was like, wow, I've done a lot of these things. And this was
Oh
like
my
2 or 3 years
gosh.
ago that I made that. So I'm usually have the ideas, but yeah, to me, like the market needs and actually find the customers is a different story. So with like the meal prepping stuff, for example, I fell into it. I just had another private chef have a child, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. Do you mind taking my clients? And
Wow.
that kind of gave me like the foundation to be like, okay, how does this work? Like they're amazing at giving me feedback and have kids and all that stuff. So that helped me like really get my groove going with that. And now we're expanding. I've hired 2 employees and we just got a commercial kitchen as
Oh
of
my
yesterday.
gosh.
So
Congrats.
thanks. Yeah. So like that, it's all like trial and error. And so that has been again like sort of a reactive thing, but now we're making it more proactive. I'm trying to still be slow with my growth,
Yeah.
because the worst thing I think is to kind of get ahead of yourself and then not really produce something that's super high quality. With the cooking classes, for example, I started off really doing like the pasta classes, right? And that was like sort of my bread and butter. But then I was like, I'm kind of bored of these, or I want to try different things. So then I would expand to like Mediterranean and French and all this stuff. But I didn't always have like the best skill set in that, or even like sushi and stuff. So I am always like trying to practice and learn. But yeah, I kind of wait for someone to say that they want to do something, and then I'll practice it, and
Yeah.
then we'll go ahead and deliver it. And it's the same thing with catering. Like obviously I know how to cook and um do things at scale for people, but there's just weird little nuances and logistics about like how are you going to get it from
Yeah.
point A to point B, and like how is it even legal to do this? Like you can't necessarily do it out of your house, and there's a lot of logistics and stuff. So I am just still like learning and reacting. And luckily nothing terrible has happened,
Yeah.
but I do like stay up late at night thinking about that.
I'm sure, yeah, because there are a lot of rules around it. Man, that feels like a big bear or just a can of worms, honestly, of like, oh, what
Yeah.
am I going to do to figure this out? So how have you, like even you've just hired 2 employees,
Mhm.
you have now a commercial kitchen, which is so cool. Things like making sure you're following all the rules and guidelines on transporting food. I'm sure there's temperature, all the timing aspect, I'm sure
Mhm.
matters. Um, do you have like resources that you've been using of like, how do I hire these employees? Like, what do I do? How do I go about this?
Mhm.
How have you tackled those things?
I've been pretty lucky because I mean, there is a great network of entrepreneurs, especially women
Yeah.
here, and I've become friends with a lot of like-minded women in that way. But I've also found just some cool resources locally, like the library has a culinary consultation branch. So I met with
Oh
them
my
the other day and I was
gosh.
like, okay, how do I have a commercial kitchen in Kansas, but I
Hmm.
have an LLC in Missouri? Like asking those questions.
Yeah.
And then I have like friends and family who are like accountants and stuff. So I've been taking
Awesome.
them to lunch and being like, help me. So I've been doing a lot of that stuff. And then just obviously like self research and be like, okay, this is a problem I have to tackle today. Like I'm going to try to learn as much as I can.
Yep.
And the other thing that I've had kind of the opportunity to do this year, which has been last year, I guess, and this year, that's been super helpful, is actually finally working in kitchens. It's crazy because again, never went to culinary school, never worked in a kitchen. And so last year, 2024, kind of right after my final surgery, that recovery is still ongoing. So it was
Yeah.
tough. So I was like, I'm going to just take on some gigs for this next like year. So I worked at a local pasta shop. And so that's where I got to learn, just like by being immersed in it, like, okay, this is like a little bit how a kitchen runs. This is how we communicate as a team. Here's like
Yep.
more food safety standards, that kind of stuff. But that kitchen, it was like more small and production focused. And so
Gotcha.
recently I took on a job as a line cook at a well-known French restaurant here called Westport Cafe. Um, and so I'm doing that maybe like 30 hours a week right now, which is
Wow.
insane.
Yeah.
But I'm learning so much about just, again, like operating a food business at scale. And it is really filling in some of the gaps that I felt like I was missing in terms of like being a chef, which was like
Yeah.
how to plate things, how to, really is plating is a big one for me, but
Yeah.
like just innovatively working with a team. I mean,
Hmm.
all these kitchens I've been working at have still been pretty small and scrappy. So that really like aligns with Florabelle.
Yeah.
So that's like how I've been really kind of like trying to learn outside of, I guess just doing it myself and having that like community and being able to ask questions that are on top of my mind, has been really helpful.
That's awesome. I am impressed like how much you do and have done over the years behind the scenes to just learn and you like actively crave more. You're taking classes when you travel. You
Mhm.
go you truly go above and beyond. And I think any imposter syndrome should go out the door right now because you're really impressive and you work really hard. So you absolute like it that's just super cool. You're like, I'm gonna immerse myself in this and being in a kitchen and I'm going to do multiple and learn. And what an awesome benefit to your team and the people that you have that are helping you because they're like, she's driven and actively like working her tail off to just make this business and which in turns makes them better and helps them learn as well. So I just think you are really impressive and that's amazing. You have, and just the grit that obviously you've had, I think is neat. And through those experiences, through what being willing to just like roll up your sleeves, do you have any personal mantras or practices that kind of help you push through those really hard days? So health wise, maybe you're having a really cruddy day, but you're like, I have so much to do. What's your mantra of like to keep going on those really hard days?
Um, Yeah, I think my mantra, I mean, every year I kind of think of a different kind of goals, but they're not goals at all. They're just intentions. So
Yeah.
I guess like the year that I had my surgery, I was like, okay, this year I'm focusing on my dharma and then detoxing because I had another terrible health situation with some black mold that we're not even going to get into. And what was it? Deep healing, something like that. So
Hmm.
that was the year where I was like, these are my focuses. And that like helped me keep going because I find Florabelle to kind of be my dharma, which in yoga is kind of like your life path. This year I'm really focusing on just like having conviction and connection through my community, all that stuff. So it's really more so like setting these intentions. Um, And then I would say sometimes I just like have to drop in. Like it's sort of that like yogic meditation type philosophy, but I'm like, okay, today I really am not in the mood to teach a sushi class. Like I'm tired and I don't have the kind of social battery that I would love for this. But within like the first 15 minutes of meeting the person who I'm teaching and stuff, I just can kind of lock in and power through. So yeah, I would say it's kind of that like I grew up as like an athlete. I'm a big yogi. I play tennis, all that stuff. So I feel like it's kind of one of those things where you just like truly have to dig deep sometimes. And, you know, other times I do have self-doubt, but I would say something that has really helped keep me going over the last year is my employees. So I had my first employee this summer who was with me for like 6 months and did more of like social media and all this stuff. She totally bought into the mission and we just got like really close. And now she's living in France. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, she's amazing. So she's been like still kind of helping out as we can and kind of helping bring the French culture to
Sweet.
Florabelle. But that has been really helpful because doing it alone is just like you do have days where you're just like, this is not something that I can sustain. And sustainability is one of my personal values, definitely around the business, like just thinking about how we impact like the food system. Like we're always trying to like compost or use all our food, but also like, is this sustainable for me? Because that would go against kind of like the values of Florabelle if I'm just kind of
Mm-hmm.
sacrificing my body in the name of health. So
Yeah.
I try to like check myself on that a lot because sometimes I'm up super late or I'm just like pushing through and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, this isn't even really like aligning with what I said I want to do. So I do try to kind of do that. And then my other values are like adventure and yeah, community. So I also try to make sure that those are always like embedded into the business. So like taking those trips to Colorado or California and stuff like that and making sure that I still feel really fulfilled in the business because I don't want to just kind of be like in a kitchen day in and day out. I want to make sure that I'm kind of exploring and making this work for my lifestyle.
Yeah. So would you consider yourself extroverted then?
Oh
Just
yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
that is the problem is like truly I am
You're
so
like,
extroverted like to a fault that once I just like get around other people and stuff, that's where I can totally like refill my battery. And that's
awesome.
why I think like working in the kitchen and stuff actually really suits my personality, even on
Yeah.
days where I'm like, I am way too tired to work till 1 a.m. or something. But
Yeah.
if there's good music, I have to have good music. Like yesterday, I called my sister. I was like, you need to bring a speaker to the kitchen or else I'm not going to be able to do this. I have to have music and then maybe someone around me and I can just like chit chat, maybe a matcha, and I'll be fine.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That sounds important and very critical. I love that.
hmm
So, what are some of your goals for 2025 for the business?
Well, for 2025, I really want to streamline the farm to table stuff. I mean, right now we're in the dead of winter. So I
Yeah.
feel like in terms of obviously produce, we're not doing a ton of farm to table things. But I want like all the meats and fish and everything to be regeneratively raised, wild caught. I mean, it is all those things, but I want it to be even more direct where I can point to like, hey, this is the farmer we're getting it from. I have a great relationship with them. And really building that out. And then also wanting to build out more of a kind of like postpartum Ayurvedic. Are you familiar with Ayurveda?
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
I try to make it, but not always. Building out more of like an Ayurvedic meal prepping service, like really focus
Oh,
on those either like it could be someone like me, post surgery, new
yeah.
autoimmune disease, anything like that, but trying to build out something where someone can really be nourished. So like a bit more something that's niche. Um, and then doing again like more traveling, like I've reached out to some chefs and stuff I know in Utah and things like
Cool.
that, and just hoping to do a bit more of those kind of like big experiences, even if it's just with other companies. So that's kind of like a personal goal of mine is to just continue like supporting that regenerative model. And I would say just like scaling the catering stuff. Like I've had friends and stuff kind of like joke with me. They're like, I want you to do my wedding or like rehearsal dinner and stuff. I'm like, I would love to do that
Yeah.
sometime. So I think in the next year or something, I'd love to get to do more bigger catering events, stuff like that. And then I would say like personal goals for me too is to have the business kind of run itself in other ways where it's like if I have two cooking classes in a night, I can have an employee do one of them, or if
Yeah.
I'm out of town, I don't have to say no to everything.
Yeah.
So really like making it more of a business
Yep.
would be great. So it's not just me.
Yep.
And then possibly, I don't know if this would be 2025, but just getting a space with maybe some green area so we could have a little garden. When I was in LA, I taught cooking classes to high school students.
Oh,
So we had like
cool.
it was in Venice. That's where I lived. There was a huge like
Sweet.
learning garden. And so I would go there every Tuesday and teach them how to make like plant-based foods out of the garden. So that was something that I found to be like really cool. So I'd love to do more stuff like that, like setting up more like programs. So it's not sort of these more like affluent, always clients who are like, come to my house and do all this. Like it's not always accessible to everyone. And a lot of people want to just do like date night or
Yeah.
they have a smaller group or something. So finding different ways to make like the culinary education more accessible to people, especially around sustainability. And
Yeah.
then, okay, the last idea I have, and then
I
I'll stop.
love it.
But
No, keep
with the
going.
meal prepping stuff, I thought it'd be really cool to and not I don't know how to say this, but encourage people to compost. And so when we drop off
Oh,
meals, we could pick up their compost. So I need to reach out to a compost company or something about that. But that would mean so much to me to really
yeah.
like have a true impact and kind of make this a true zero waste business. So things like that, like just looking at our own supply chain, our own waste, how we're kind of transporting things. Like I'd love to really know like what Florabelle's impact is on the food system and how we can kind of offset everything. So that's gets more into like my sustainability
I love
stuff.
it.
Like doing like a life cycle assessment or something would be really cool in the future.
On your meal prepping service, how do you are they coming in single servings? Is it like for a family or what is that
My
process?
families have like most of them have like 4 kids. So
Yeah.
we're doing about like 6 servings of
Okay.
everything. And right now I'm in the process of finding the best like compostable packaging.
Yeah.
Some of my family's like glass, but I have a really small apartment. So like just even storing the glass, I'm like, I don't know where to put this.
Yeah.
So it'd be amazing to do that for everyone, but it's just not really like the best way of transporting stuff. So working on finding more of like solutions in terms of packaging that is very low waste and obviously never toxic.
Yep.
So yeah, those are some things that we're working on. I do some individuals, but we're trying to like figure out what the cost benefit is of that. I live in
Yeah.
a great neighborhood where a lot of people are starting to kind of hear about the business and stuff. So if it's individuals in the neighborhood, it's no big deal because they can
Yeah.
pick
It's
it up or
easy.
something. So we're still working out like all the kinks in that.
Sweet. Man, I need to get pricing from you on
Yeah,
the food,
yeah.
the
No,
meal prep. That sounds amazing.
it's very nourishing. Like I feel so much better on the weeks where if I remember to give myself a portion, I feel so much better because I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like I didn't have to think about this and I had like high protein breakfast and lunch. And if I
Yes.
don't do that just with my schedule and stuff, I end up eating like bananas. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Bananas and cottage cheese. And I'm like,
Yeah, almond butter, that's like literally my
It's like,
staple diet. So, yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I love the fact, I think it's a great idea to figure out how you could pick out the compost too. That would
Mhm,
be, I feel like people would be like, okay, this is a great like next step for what I'm doing with this. Um,
mhm.
I love to garden, but and I know I need to get compost for my garden. I'm just like a little intimidated about like, okay, am I properly turning it and getting the right things in there? And so it always feels daunting. I feel like teaching people how to compost is another class you could do.
Yeah, totally. And like, I mean, the goal really is just like more collaborative experiences. So
Yeah.
like I've been doing a lot of stuff with Canbees. It's a nonprofit locally that's very focused on creating a circular food economy, but especially in food deserts. So doing things
Oh,
like that is super nourishing to me. And I think it also just kind of helps get the Florabelle name out, but also like really aligning with the values and finding the customers that I really want.
yeah.
Because I think in the beginning years, this is like my advice, I guess, or thing that I learned in the beginning years is I really wanted to be like something for everyone. Even my branding is pretty something for everyone. And now we're kind of trying to make it so it's like we're really calling in the people who are going to be most aligned with what we're doing. You know,
Yep.
if someone's not familiar with Ayurveda or something like that, that's totally fine. But I enjoy the most of the times when people are a bit in that sort of like biohacky, or
Yep.
honestly, anyone who's had a child, I feel like has gone through at least some kind of renaissance where they're like, okay, I am thinking about what I'm putting in my
Yeah.
mouth and my children's mouth. So
Yep.
women especially are my biggest audience because we are just a little bit more in tune with our bodies and what we're eating and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, when you add children to the mix, it's just a whole new level. I feel like now we've had 2, and I'm like, it's just it compounds. It's
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
compounds after even just 1. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So how do you balance the demands of running a business with your personal life? Because you are very, outgoing. I assume you have a very robust social life because you just love, that interaction with people. So how do you balance the 2?
Yeah, that has been more difficult than I expected. But again, it's kind of like Florabelle gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of cool people. I have a lot of friends who kind of I've collaborated with. So
Yeah.
sometimes we do things together and that just feels super nourishing. Like work doesn't always feel like work. Um, I would say things like dating or things like that. That's a little bit on the not so much priority list right now, but it's one day. But I would say with the personal life stuff, like even just taking care of like my health or
Yeah.
making sure that I'm showing up for things. Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard. You just have to kind of like find the little pieces where you can do it and really just build out your schedule in a way that does account for those kinds of things. And then I would also say, as like an outgoing kind of person who can't really turn off, my biggest hack, I guess, is traveling. So
Yeah.
I'm not even like a restful traveler. I like go and hike and do that kind of stuff.
Nice.
But that's how I get to like connect with my friends because so many of my friends live all around the country, especially like on the West Coast. So that's kind of how I like decompress is going to like visit friends or even just going on I love solo traveling, like going on yoga retreats and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of like balance my personal life is like, okay, I'm going on vacation I went on vacation for like a month earlier this
Awesome.
fall and like traveled and hiked and stuff. So that helps. And I'm still working, but not in the like caliber that I work when I'm here because I'm
Yeah.
just like fully locked in all the time here. So
Yeah.
that's how I try to do it. But yeah, there's definitely times when I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen my friends in a long time. And we're also at
Yeah.
that life stage where I'm 32. So a lot of my friends have kids and blah, 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 and they're busy. So in some ways, I'm like, this is my kid
Yeah.
and this is my
Yeah.
baby. So I don't feel like I'm missing out a lot of times because I'm really like just building something. And yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know. It's a
believe
work in progress.
yeah. I believe in like work life integration. Like they kind of just, you can't separate the 2. I feel pretty strongly about it. There's just times when like I'm going to work and my kids are right there and I can't just, it's just part of life a little bit.
Totally.
But also like getting their buy-in, and like I'm sure your friends too are like 100% like cheering you on every step of the way, where it's like,
Yeah.
it's not like this like toxic issue by any means,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and honestly, my family's been really supportive over the
Nice.
last year or so. It's kind of like a weird transition to go from working in these corporate jobs, and they're very supportive when I got my master's and all this stuff, and for me to kind of feel like I'm throwing it away, not throwing it away, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yep. Not
pivoting
using
and
it
a really,
technically.
I didn't think I'd be like 32 working in the kitchen.
Yep.
They've been super supportive. Like they came into the restaurant the other day and we're stoked. So that has been really awesome is just kind of getting that buy-in from them too, because I'm really close with my family.
Yeah.
And just kind of having all of them be supportive, just telling other people about it, and just kind of cheering me on. That's been really nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's one thing, I guess this is my final question that I like to ask everyone. So what's one thing you wish you knew when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I actually have to think about this one. Um, I guess one thing I would like that I wish I had known is honestly it was just the best decision I've ever made, like
Yeah.
even just picking out the name, I remember it's after my great grandma and even
Oh,
that has been
cool.
so special. So I'd say just knowing that it's going to actually be something that is really like kept me afloat during some of those like hardest times of my life. It's really been like the best thing I've ever done. It's kind of my like soul coming alive. So that's been amazing. And then the other thing is I wish I had been saving all my receipts and collecting all my email addresses from day one, because it's really hard to do that in retroactive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say just really like so happy that it's become what it is. And honestly, like I just feel like I'm getting started. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like in a year or 5 years or anything like that. So I'm just really proud of how far it's come, even though it's still really, really small.
Yeah, it is. It's so impressive. Your passion, like, I just feel your passion for it so much. So it's just, this has been really, really fun to experience and talk to you. Can
Awesome.
you share with people where they can find you? How can they get into or how can they get in contact with you and just
Yeah.
learn more and just see your story?
Yeah. We have an Instagram. It's Florabelle_food. My website is florabellefood.com. You can email me. You can find all that stuff. Kind of DM me, do whatever. You'll figure it out. But yeah, Instagram is kind of our biggest way of just like connecting with our community and showing everyone what we're up to. So I'd recommend that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Liza. This was an absolute joy and pleasure. So I really appreciate your time and your
Yeah,
willingness to share with us.
yeah, of course. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I hope you found inspiration and insights to fuel your entrepreneurial journey. If you're looking for support in building or scaling your business profitably, visit my website or send me an email to learn more about how I help mission-driven businesses become more profitable, proactive, and efficient. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps other entrepreneurs discover the show, and it would mean so much to me as well. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep going.